What's up, criminals? How are you? It's your buddy Rich, and I am in the airport in Tokyo, Japan. Just finished up a 10-day trip here for my for the World Finals for Clash Royale League. It was an amazing tournament, and I've spent a few days here in Tokyo, just wandering around, learning about the city. And because I'm in Tokyo and Jonathan Davidshevsky is back in Los Angeles taking care of his new baby boy, we don't have a traditional episode. But I learned quite a bit about crime in Tokyo and just sort of some interesting cultural notes. So we're going to talk a little bit about what crime is like in Tokyo, because it's actually fascinating. And I'm not talking organized crime, the Yakuza. That's not going to be a part of our discussion, although I will get into to that a little bit on a sideways note, but more about the insane lack of crime and why that is and sort of the effects it has. And we'll also go over the 5 crimes in Japan that are unique to Japan, that are kind of because of they're kind of created by the culture. So I was lucky enough that a local comedian took me around and kind of showed me a little bit about Tokyo, and he made a really interesting point, which is Tokyo is very homogenous, and not just ethnically, culturally, but also just socially. Like, fitting in is really important here. Being part of the pack is really important here. And he said that comes with 2 things. One is, also shout out to JJ, thanks a lot, man. Comes with 2 things. Being the homogenous as a population gives you superpowers and super weirdness. Right, this country is insanely clean. There aren't trash cans anywhere. There are no it's hard to find a trash can. People keep their trash in their pockets or their purses. But the streets are insanely clean in Tokyo. You almost want to drop your food on purpose just so you can pick it up and eat it for the novelty of it. Everything's super orderly. Like, everyone's polite. It's easy to get everywhere. The trains literally run on time. We got into a train once, a subway to go from one stop to another, and it didn't move. The doors were closed, and he goes, you don't want to know why it's not moving? Because it's not time to go yet. And then 20 seconds later, it left. It's absolutely wild here, how everything goes in order. There's almost no traffic, and we'll get into some of that in a minute. But in one of the biggest cities in the world, most populous, densely populated cities in the world, almost no traffic. And there's reasons behind that are kind of orchestrated, but yeah, it's absolutely crazy here. But then it also comes with the superpowers also come with a super problem, which is it creates weirdness. And we'll get a little bit about Japan's weird relationship with sexuality, because it certainly is strange, especially from a Western perspective. But in terms of crime, there's like nothing here. The murder rate is like 0.3 people per 1,000 people, or per 100,000, 0.3 per 100,000. In the States, it's 5. It's like over 5 per 100,000. There's 10 gun deaths a year in Japan. Obviously not as many guns, but just in general, the murder rate is crazy low. The theft rate is crazy low. Just the street crime is almost non-existent, to the point where the police don't have a lot to do here. And there's way more police than there are crimes. Part of it is because the social stigma. In Japan, you fitting in and not being an outcast is really critical, and being a criminal makes you an outcast, so much so that the Yakuza, they're known for having tattoos, and all the onsen, the local public baths, won't let you in with tattoos. And until recently, they wouldn't even let Westerners in with a tattoo. Now, as at request of the government, they'll let you in, but you have to put patches over your tattoos to cover them up, and if you have to use more than 4 patches, you can't come in. But yeah, there's a crazy stigma around it where you can't, because you're naked in the bath. By the way, if you go to Japan, go to an onsen. All you do is like sit around in hot pools of water and then take naps in couches. It's crazy. It's super nice. It's a great way to relax and take a load off for a couple of days. But yeah, you can't have tattoos there because the stigma of being a criminal is so powerful here. You do not want to kind of cross the line and go that direction. And that means that there's a lot of police officers, but there aren't a whole lot of crimes, which is crazy. So what do they end up doing? Well, they go heavy. Like, when they actually do get someone for a crime, the cops here go all the way in. Like, if you report that if you have something stolen from your apartment, you'll have 5-6 police officers in there interviewing you for hours, trying to figure things out, just because they have nothing else to do here. And the other thing too is they really go after you for drugs. There's no drug problem. There's not a big drug problem here because they prosecute, and there's a lot of stigma behind drugs. Like if you talk to Japanese people about weed, they think that weed is the devil's herb. Like they are way on the other end of the universe for that. A buddy of mine went on a couple dates here, and one of the local girls he dated, she was just absolutely shocked. She's like, well, doesn't weed make you crazy and stupid? And he's like, do you think that I'm crazy and stupid? And I smoke quite a lot. And she's like, oh, I've like never even heard that before. It sounds like you're okay, you're fine. She was absolutely shocked. So yeah, the police, there was actually a huge stir here in this country a few years ago when two very famous sumo wrestlers would discover that they had smoked weed. They tested positive for marijuana, and the whole country was up in arms and shamed and stuff by it. So it's a really weird relationship with that, of course. But the police kind of create things to get on you about. So there was one case in Kyoto where they arrested a group of people who shared the fees for renting a car because it was determined that was an illegal taxi. They invent crimes to mess with. And then of course there's we in the States have our entrapment. Go to a bad neighborhood and leave a van full of sneakers unlocked and then arrest the people who show up. Well, 5 officers spent a week with a case of beer in an unlocked car outside of a supermarket in a small town where there had been a series of car robberies. And then after a week, a middle-aged man who may or may not have been drunk tried to grab the beers, and they arrested him. So that 5 officers over a case of beer theft sting because they had nothing to do. So if you're living in a small town, you're like, these officers won't leave us alone because they're bored. Well, take that and apply it to a country of 126 million people, which gets absolutely nuts. Most of their criminal justice is just the confessions. 90% of their trials or cases that go to trial are solved by confession because they'll lean on you. And one of the ideas behind it is that they kind of feel like you're supposed to feel bad about your crime. So if they think that you're guilty, it's not officially that way, but it's almost the opposite of us, where it really is guilty until proven innocent. We're going to lean on you because you should feel bad. They also one of the dark sides about that, though, is because of this image at such a low crime rate, sometimes it's said that police officers won't investigate crimes unless they think they have a clear suspect and motive. Unless they really think they can make it, they're not going to go after it. So that might kind of inflate the numbers of how great they do it. One guy was arrested for scribbling Hitler mustaches on posters of the Prime Minister everywhere. Oh, speaking of the Prime Minister, I was my first day here, I went for a jog, kind of get some of the kinks out, and I ran by this beautiful park, and I couldn't find a way in, so I asked a police officer, how do I get up there? And he laughs at me and says no. And I look it up on Google Maps, and it was the official residence of Tokyo's Prime Minister, or of Japan's Prime Minister. So, yeah, that was exciting. So, let's go over to the 5 crimes. There are 5 crimes listed that are sort of unique crimes of Japan, and I have some perspective on my 10 days here that'll relate to them. But let's start with one that we're familiar with a lot on crime, and that's called sagi, which means fraud or scam. And it used to be really all about door-to-door sales, but now they come in a lot in the form of ore phone calls, where the perpetrator poses as a relative of the victim, which I don't know how they pull that off. I guess they don't tell us not your friend's voice or whatever. But ore means it's me. And they ask the person they're calling, be like, hey, it's me, I'm in a lot of trouble. Can you go to an ATM and send me money really quick because I need money right now? It's so bad that ATMs here, a lot of them have signs that ask why you're taking cash out. Just, hey, before you take this cash out, did you receive a phone call where someone said, hey, it's me, can I get some money? Because that's a scam. Or they even actually have questions that say, are you sure it's not a scam, next to ATMs? Because the problem is, because people fall for that so bad. So that's one of the many scams they have. They also do door-to-door salesman scams where they jack up the price of stuff. One they used to do for a long time would be selling $3,000 futons to elderly people. I don't know why that's a scam that exists. I don't even know how that works, but they would sell $3,000 futons to elderly people. Really just a lot of high pressure, going repairing your roof, massage chairs, just any sort of item that you don't need, and then at a crazy super markup and just saying it's the best thing in the universe. Kind of like who was that guy who was selling the glasses and stuff like that out in the wilderness that we did once? I don't remember his name. Doesn't really matter. So yeah, like really basic scam. Can you imagine someone calling you up being like, hey, it's me and I need money, and you're like, oh cool, me. I'm not gonna verify. I'm not gonna be like, who? I'm just gonna go, it's you, and then give you money. Like, that works out really well, to the point where they have signs on the ATMs to make sure you don't do that. That's when you know there's a real. I've always said that they won't. You never post a rule unless there's a sign. I was at the famous Shibuya crossing, which is the busiest pedestrian crossing in the world, and I went to like a lookout point to watch when everyone walks across the street because I was touristy, and there was a sign there that said the rules of things you don't do, and it said like no, drinking, no spitting, no umbrellas for some reason, no selfie sticks like being used over the side of the thing, and then there's a thing for no fighting. They had a sign that said no fighting. I'll post that. I'll attach that. So I'll post it on our Twitter, I think. I had a sign that said no fighting because apparently now they only would have a sign there if people were regularly fighting overlooking Shibuya crossing. That's why a sign goes up. So yeah, so many scams here that they had there. Next, number 2 on our list of the 5 things that people do in Japan that are crimes that are unique to this culture. Enjokosai, or compensated dating. So it's not prostitution. It's generally not prostitution. Let's be clear. But enjokosai involves high school girls dating much older men in exchange for like cash, gifts, or just being taken care of. And there's no sex in it. It's just being their date. It's not even. I don't even know if that really is a crime. It's just creepy. It's just really, really creepy, but it's listed on the 5 unique crimes here. It doesn't always involve actually getting down. And that dude, okay, let's talk about the sex stuff, because the relationship here, there's something like very weirdly like Arrested Development-y about the way, and I mean like not the show, but the actual people in a state of Arrested Development when it comes to sex stuff. I didn't go in. I couldn't go in. My friend showed me a video of when they went in, and I laughed, and I wanted to go, but I didn't have it. By the time I was by one, I didn't have any of my crew with me. I couldn't go in alone. But there are these places called maid bars, and what it is you go in, and there's a bunch of young girls dressed up as maids. I mean, like adults, but like teenagers, 18, 19 years old, dressed up in French maid outfits. And it's like picture like a tea party you would have for your 5-year-old daughter, right? Everyone's there's all frilly clothes and pink and a bunch of stuff there, but now make it Japanese, and there's a bunch of stuff that looks kind of anime-ish everywhere. And these maid bars, you go and sit there and you order drinks and food, and when they bring it, they like do the heart with their hand symbol, maybe do like a little a song and a hand dance, and then every once in a while the servers will get up there and do like super anime style, hi, hands like this, doing weird motions, K-pop style anime dances, like real human beings in maid outfits. Now, that's all just weird, right? That's weird. It's not as creepy yet. What's creepy isn't what's happening on stage. What's creepy is the locals who are regulars, who are there all the time. And my buddy is like, they showed me a video of this, because you're not supposed to take video, but my buddy's like snuck one in because he had his camera on the table. And there's all these old, like, middle-aged Japanese dudes who will go there. And again, there's nothing overtly sexual about any of this. There's no touching. There's no like showing any body parts. But then these girls, like, they'll come up to the guy will order a whiskey, and the girl will come up, and she'll start doing some, like, 10-second, 15-second, like, dance cheer thing where she, like, makes a heart out of her hands and says some words and claps and does, like, the ba-ba-da-da-da-da-da, that kind of thing. And these guys will smile and laugh and, like, sing along and do the motions with them. So this is, like, middle-aged dudes and, like, 18-year-old girls in French maid outfits. And so it's like these guys are, like, 5-year-olds. It's the craziest thing ever. So yeah, I was gonna go into one, but I was by myself, and I was like, nah. It's if it's with a buddy, it's funny. If it's by myself, it's just weird. And normally I'm down for weird, but this was just. I walked up to the door and looked in, and I saw like a girl in a maid outfit, like sitting at the counter, and some other dude talking to her. I was like, nope, I'm out. That was in the Akibara neighborhood, which is so there's a bunch of neighborhoods here in Japan, right? Shibuya is like a young, trendy, like shopping district. Shinjuku is like a party area, and that's also seedy. It's where the red light district is. We'll get into that crazy stuff later. Roppongi is like if you want to party like you're 22 on Bourbon Street or wherever. Roppongi's gross. We'll get there in a little bit. But Akihara, is that what it was? I forgot the name of the neighborhood, but it's where Electric Town is. It's the nerd neighborhood. It's where there's a bunch of like anime shops and weird video arcades, and everything's like 7 stories tall. And I didn't go there in the daytime, which is when I should have gone. Instead, I went at night, and it was weird. So they have all these anime shops, like comic book shops. Okay, picture this. Picture you go to your local comic book shop, right? And floor number 1 of the 7 floors that are there is comic books. You have, there's Captain America and Spider-Man and Batman and some off-brand comics, maybe some T-shirts and stuff like that. Floor number 2, you go up there and you're like, oh, this is all the figurines, right? There's a Hulk figurine, and there's a life-size version, like cutout version of Superman. And then there's a bunch of like really anime figurines where it's like, oh, there's some Dragon Ball Z stuff and some other characters I don't know. And now it gets really deep and I don't really know these things, but it's still all fun and games. Then you go to the 3rd floor and suddenly everything's changed just a little bit, right? There's still figurines, but now the figurines are scantily clad women in very, very suggestive poses. Like legs bent in a way that makes no sense and chest pushed out in like bikinis and stuff like that, or like putting their finger to their lips, hee 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 hee. And you're like, okay, this is weird. I didn't know this was a comic book thing, but that's fine. This is totally cool. And then you go to the 4th floor, and it's the same thing, but now they're actually naked. Now these figurines are nude doing dirty stuff. And then you keep going up, and each floor becomes successively creepier and weirder porn. This is your local this is where like you take your kid to go buy a Spider-Man comic book, and then you go upstairs by 4 floors, and now you're buying an anime pornographic comic book where like it's a lactation porn. It was the strangest thing I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot of strange things, everybody. Let's be very, very clear, but this was absolutely insane. And I went all the way up the 7 floors. It got weirder and weirder, and I was like, "This is." I was also didn't even know the nerd stuff they had. Like I was looking for a thing that I would recognize, and it was all like super anime stuff. I'm not really in that level, but yeah, this was the nerd. The nerd district is also like a major porn district, but specifically mostly drawn porn. There was like a whole floor of in these things of like there'll always be a whole floor of DVDs and stuff like that. But yeah. So that was that direction, but again, it's all like there's this really weird, childish, like, and that's again the superpower part is that this country is all middle class. I didn't see any homeless people the entire time I was here in Tokyo, and I traveled all over the city back and forth. I didn't even see anyone who like looked kind of homeless. Like anyone who was like, is he homeless? No, I never even saw that, and I traveled all over one of the biggest cities in the world. Every place I went was super polite. Every restaurant I went to, you don't need Yelp here. Yelp's irrelevant. If you go to Tokyo, don't Yelp a darn thing. Maybe you're a travel guy to get some cool experience or whatever, but just as soon as you get there, just walk into a restaurant. Just go in anywhere, and you're gonna have the best meal of your life in nearly every single restaurant. But also, there's some weird shit, son. It gets really, really strange. And that same thing pours into the nighttime. So during the daytime, the city is just beautiful and gorgeous and exactly what you think Tokyo would be. And at night, in certain areas, it's like that. But also, as it gets later and later, the weird underbelly of these. So there's the maid bars, also the girls bars, where guys again pay to hang out with women, and that's where like they start picking girls up from. You go to this girls bar and you just basically pay for girls company, and eventually you might like strike a deal for when the bar closes. Some of them might go with you, some of them might not. But I saw there was one near there, but they're everywhere. Like you think like, oh, that would be in a weird part of town, right? No, because it's not red light district stuff. That's just these girls bars of like, hey, you'll hang out with me. So I was in a business district, Akasaka, which is like a really nice, everyone there's always in business suits all day and stuff, but at night there are these girls bars and dudes will come out of it, and I saw like the most pathetic fist fight I've seen in my life. 2 guys, like a middle-aged guy and a younger guy, were fighting over how the younger guy was talking to some woman, and the middle-aged guy like slapped the younger guy once, and then he tried to punch him. And I say tried because this was like a 10-minute long fist fight. He tried to punch him, but pretend you were trying to punch somebody, but your entire arm was numb. Like you couldn't feel your hand or your fingers. People were like, oh my God, he might hurt him. And I'm like, that's impossible. There's no way he could hurt him because his hand is a limp noodle, and you cannot jam a limp noodle into a wall and do any damage. So it's very, very strange. There is also the red light district, which is in Shinjuku, which is weird. And so yeah, so then there's also like the street level girls who, the later it gets, the more of them there are who are like Masaji. Apparently most of them are Chinese and not Japanese, but that's what I was told by some of the locals. I met some, local Westerners who, by the way, I met some really nice local Westerners, but I would say 90% of the Westerners who were living here are super weird. Just going to go ahead and throw that out there. I met some really cool ones. One of them showed me around town. 90% of them, though, are super off. Like, there's just something where you're like, wow, I would not leave you alone with my pet or child or my grandmother. Like, you're just strange. But yeah, so then you get that level thing. And then you go to okay, so we'll get into we'll get back to this list here. We'll go to number 2 pretty soon. But then there's also an area called Roppongi, which young people will tell you it's like the best place to go party in Tokyo, and they're insane. They're out of their mind. It's gross. It's like, what if Bourbon Street was more ruined than Katrina did in the first place? Like, it's just terrible. It's, the street kind of place I'm talking about, Bourbon Street now, or like Main Street in Nashville, or 6th Street, Dirty 6th in Austin. It's one of those streets that like smells. It's the only place that was dirty in all of Tokyo, by the way. It smells like that smell of urine and puke and old booze. Like, that's the place. It's like all shot bars. If you're 22 and stupid, it might be a place to go. But here's the scary part about it. It's lined specifically with Nigerians who are there to recruit you to try to they're trying to get you to come and see like titty bars. And they'll go like, do you like titties? Do you like titties? That's what they do. They try to grab you and talk to you and say, do you like titties? You want to see titties? And the locals all say never go with them. The reason why is what apparently they're doing is they take you to what's supposedly a strip club. And in Tokyo, you never know. Everything's built very up and down, so you might find the best ramen place. The best ramen place I went to, or one of them, was down 2.5 flights of stairs underground to find it. Whereas some of the coolest bars and stuff might be 4 or 5 floors up. Like those signs that you know from Blade Runner, like that kind of up and down lighted signs. That's because unlike us, where like a building will be named, this is the Toshiba building and the whole building is that, each floor has its own sign. That's what you're seeing. That's what those crazy lighted signs are. So you don't know going up or downstairs if you're going to something cool. So these Nigerians, what they'll do is they'll say like, hey, you like titties? And then they will take you like up or down some stairs. And next thing you know, you are cornered. And they are threatening you, and they take whatever cash they have on you, and then they start threatening you, and they take your cards and they empty your bank accounts. And if you try to complain, they speak Japanese and you don't, and maybe they are throwing payoffs. I have no idea. But like people from the crew on the show that I was here with, like people from that crew got taken by some of these Japanese dudes. It's like a legit problem. So whatever you do, when you go to Japan, don't go to Roppongi. It's overrated. You can go to Shinjuku and drink in the Golden Guy District, which is all tiny bars that seat like 5 to 8 people. You can go to Shibuya, which is really trendy and fun and popular. But yeah, Roppongi is absolutely gross. And that's all getting into that same vein of like the weird relationship with sex stuff here. Okay, number 3, and this one is fascinating. The number 3 weirdly unique Japanese crime is recycling trucks. So what they are these trucks with speakers mounted on top that like go around neighborhoods yelling out a recording that says in Japanese that they will take any of your unwanted like computers, CD players, refrigerators, washing machines, TVs, like whatever sort of electronic mechanical type stuff you have that you want to get rid of. They'll take it off your hands, but you have to pay them. They're not buying your old merchandise, you're paying for them to take it. And the reason why is that in Japan, you can't really, if you want to throw stuff away, like unless someone wants to buy something from you, you can do that, but mostly if you want to throw stuff away, you can't really drive it to a dump. The home appliance recycling law has been around for 17 years now, and consumers have to pay a recycling fee if you take your appliances to a retail outlet for disposal. So you might pay to get rid of a refrigerator. It might cost you like $70 to throw your refrigerator away. And people don't really buy used stuff that much here, especially not in the cities. So, we'll get into the car stuff in a minute, but no one really buys used cars here in Tokyo. They only buy new cars, so used cars are insanely cheap. Like, you can get a 2012, 2013 car for like $4,000, like a good one, a nice car. So we'll get into more about that in a second. So, because of that, what these guys do is they offer you a fee to take your recycled goods, which also saves you the time and trouble of getting your refrigerator or air conditioning unit down to a local store. And then what they do is they resell, they ship the appliances out of the country to either to China just to be scrapped, be scrapped for parts and metal, or elsewhere to be to be recycled. The problem is those ships are illegal. It's basically like smuggling used appliances out of Japan, where they can be used either for resale or to be scrapped for parts or whatever. And it creates a big disposal problem where there's a bunch of illegal dumping sites in Japan because people don't know how to deal with all this different stuff. So the car thing's fascinating. In Tokyo, there's rules where you can only own a car. I don't know if it's all Japan or just Tokyo, but you can only own a car if you have a parking space within 2 kilometers of your house. And parking spaces are crazy expensive. It's not the car isn't expensive. It's the parking that's crazy expensive. So most people don't own cars. That's why in Japan, in Tokyo, they have a lot of these parking garages where you pull your car into a rotating platform. That car gets turned and gets put into like a weird cubicle that then hydraulically lifts or rotates the car out of the way. And so they store them. They like stack cars here. It's really fascinating. But people don't really buy... People, if they buy cars here, they're usually wealthy, and so they buy new cars, not used cars. So 2 things happen. Like a lot of people who will come here and live here for, let's say you're an English translator or an English teacher, you come here and live here for a year, and you get a car for some reason. A lot of people will just give their car, like, hey, you're moving here, I'm leaving, just take my car, because it's not worth anything else. And they also bought the car for super cheap because no one wants a used car here. What it also means is that there's a big used car export business out of Japan, especially out of Tokyo. So that's why when you'll see like these pictures of, oh, hey, I live in the Middle East, but I drive like a 2012 Mercedes C-Class. Well, it's because someone in Japan wanted to get rid of it 4 years later or 7 years later or whatever it is. What year is it now? 6 years later. But the way to get rid of it was someone bought it here and then shipped it over to the Middle East to be sold, which is why a lot of countries actually have like import laws against Japanese used cars, because there's a Japanese used car problem, because there's too many, because they're too cheap, but they would drive the price of used cars down in the new country. So yeah, if you want a car in Japan, it's super cheap, but you just have to pay. You not only have to pay for parking, but also you have to pay for like regular inspections that are super expensive and licensing that's super expensive. So it's not buying a car that's expensive here; it's owning a car that's crazy expensive, and so that ends up creating a whole lot of problems and creates all these weird there's black markets around goods that make no sense because there's too many people here. So the laws have been created to deal with there being too many people, and then those laws create black market services, whether it be you giving me money to take your appliance away, which then I'll scrap, or the whole car resale, and a lot of it's smuggling. Actually, on the way in to Tokyo, like through the airport customs, they have a whole bunch of signs about gold smuggling, and they specifically like ask you if you have any gold with you. And I laughed, and they didn't. But yeah, gold smuggling apparently is a really big problem. All right, number 4 on the list of crimes that are unique to Japan is crimes committed by the elderly. So, according to the National Police Agency, petty crimes like shoplifting are mostly carried out now, or increasingly carried out now, mostly by Japan's super old population, like the 65 years and older. So there's a big issue here with it's an aging population. They're not replaced. The people just ain't boning here, bro. They ain't fucking here because whatever it is, it's the weird cultural, social norms. So old people aren't being replaced. The population is quickly aging, which is why like some friends of mine here, some of my single friends really enjoyed themselves because something about the weird social stuff Westerners do really well here because they're outgoing and like give girls more overt attention. So anyway, so the Japanese people, old people don't commit most of the crimes, but most of the crimes they commit, 59% of crimes committed by the elderly are shoplifting. Now I don't know if that's the same with old people in the States. Maybe that's the exact same, but yeah, it's a big issue of shoplifting. And some of it is just that they're really isolated. So a lot of these seniors are living super past their retirement age because Japanese people don't die. Like they're basically immortal, another superpower that they have. So they live forever and they're becoming super isolated because now, so there's a whole bunch of issues why, right? So family and friends, like some of their friends do start dying, or their friends aren't as mobile, so they don't get to see people. Also, like, it's very traditional here in Japan, old people would live with their kids, but that's not happening as much now. So the old people are getting more and more isolated. It's led to more and more shoplifting. Dude, I'll tell you right now, the majority of the crime and weirdness stuff is because people are isolated. Like, Japan has a really high suicide rate, and people are socially and emotionally kind of like, this isn't everybody, but I'll say this. I said this to my buddy earlier today. We were eating lunch, like our final lunch here in Tokyo, is that I've never traveled to a place where so many stereotypes about the place were actually true, right? Like, most places you travel, the stereotypes are like, they exist. They're those for a reason, but they're like they're very like, oh, but this is still a very interesting and different country. Lots of different stuff going on. Most of the stereotypes you have about Japan, or at least that I've heard, like, they actually did play out in a certain way. And again, it's that social conformity. It's the homogeneity of the populace, not just ethnically, but culturally and sociologically. Like, I've never seen people line up on escalators so perfectly, right? Like, everyone is just very, very orderly. But what it does, because there's something about those social norms that create a lot of sense of isolation, which leads to the suicide rate, which leads to the elderly becoming more into stealing stuff, which leads to all the weird sex things that are, or like sex or non-sex, like sex adjacent things that are happening in this country. And this is. I want to be very clear. Tokyo is some of the most fun I've ever had. I love this place. It was absolutely amazing. But this is a crime. And we're talking about the messed up stuff. We're not talking about the good stuff. You want to hear about the good stuff, buy me a drink, and I'll tell you all about how much fun I had in Tokyo, because you can literally eat anywhere, and it's the best meal of your life, and there are a lot of fun, cool places to drink, and everyone's super polite and welcoming and fun. And I could spend the rest of my life in an onsen just soaking in a bath and then taking naps all day. But, all right. And number 5, and we've kind of already covered this in a certain way, but other crime that's like kind of unique to Japan is the fetish crimes. So that's obviously there's a lot of fetishes here. We've already covered some of them. A lot of them involve weird, childlike goofiness, but some of them are more creepy than that. And groping on the trains became a pretty big problem, to the point where there are now women-only carriages offered during the peak commuting hours in big cities. But the real one is panty theft, the stealing of women's underwear. Women's underwear are a huge fetish here. You might have heard of the used underwear vending machines that you can get. I didn't see any of those, by the way. I never saw one. Kind of disappointed. I thought that they'd be on every corner. But nope, didn't find one. But they're a huge fetish. And so stealing them is really, really a big issue. And specifically, like, people might dry men's underwear outside on clothing lines, but women's underwear is hung up to dry inside, away from someone who could actually steal it. So, I read an article about a person who, on a sailing trip, went to a coin-operated laundry near their port, and got a bite to eat, and then came back while their clothes were washing. And when they came back, her underwear had all been stolen from the machine. And this was from the author of this article. Underwear all gone. Someone had gone through and gone, I want your women's underwear. It's mine now. So yeah, if you're here traveling in Japan, ladies, just don't leave your underwear anywhere unless you feel like selling it, which I know some people, some college students used to do that at UCLA, who used to go on Craigslist. So I guess it's just more prevalent here. But I know some people in college who at UCLA used to post ads on Craigslist that they would go to like a coffee shop, meet some guy, have coffee with them, and then go to the bathroom, show them quickly like what underwear they were wearing, then go to the bathroom, change out of it, put it into a plastic bag, and give it to the guy for like $70, $100 or something like that. That's a real thing. So here, it's more commercial. It's just more commercialized here, guys. It's just more organized. The same thing happens in the States, but the Japanese are so organized. They figured out how to organize weird Craigslist encounters. A lot of that, I guess, people blame for like the weird sort of manga anime world, but I think the manga anime world is more of a reflection of that other aspect, the weird the weird way. Here's the thing is, like, the Japanese are so buttoned up during the daytime, but they will let loose at night. Like, they'll party at night when they're drinking. So it's a very interesting, like, two sides of everything. But that's those five unique crimes of Japan. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I don't know where the Yakuza hang out. They didn't hang out near where I was. I never saw a tattoo the entire time I was here. Although, of course, everyone's wearing business suits half the time. Did have some bomb food though. I had what was that stuff called? It was in the Korean neighborhood in Koreatown. I'm gonna look this up. Here, you know what? As long as we're here, let me tell you about some of the food that I had here in Tokyo, because oh my gosh. So you guys might go here. By the way, you can get if you're in the West Coast, you can get to Tokyo pretty cheap. Most tickets are ranging between like $600 and $1,200 or whatever. But if you keep your eye out on prices, like there are some of these price like fare alert things, you can get round trip to Tokyo from LA for like under $500 sometimes. So if you're thinking about that, go for it. Okay, so here's some of the cool things I had. I had dak galbi, which is like a little a little vat of melted cheese, and then you dip like meat in it, like barbecue style meat in it. It's basically like what if like barbecue skewers met fondue. And I bet it, like JJ again, shout out to JJ for recommending it. He thinks it'll be in the States in a year. I can't even imagine it wouldn't be. But dak galbi, cheesy ramen. There's a place in Ebisu Ebisu that kind of created it. So think ramen, bomb, right? Now think that someone has a cheese grating thing and grates like a whole mountain volcano of cheese on top of your ramen, and then you mix it in and eat that. So cheesy ramen, super bomb. Of course, the sushi here is unbelievably next level. I recommend having a chef's choice meal because they're expensive, but then the chef will just like send you things that you never even imagined, and they are all the best thing you ever had in your life. Dumplings, yeah, man, the food here was unbelievable. I definitely gained like 7 pounds being here. Oh, and the Japanese do whiskey right. Like they have you should jam on some Japanese whiskey while you're here. Trying to think of anything else from the crime-wise that I experienced while I was here. We talked about the tattoos and the Yakuza thing. We talked about the weird car stuff. We talked about Roppongi being super creepy, but the general weirdness, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, there's just not. And there is organized crime here. We'll do some more articles. We've done some stories about it before, but just in general, everyone's so darn orderly here. It's super, super strange and super different, but it makes for a wonderful time. So I think that's going to be it. Where this is sort of like a makeshift episode because I am out of the country and Shevsky and I did not plan accordingly for this week. But we'll get back to doing some more crimes of the normal variety. But I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about the crime and lack of and weirdness of crime here in Japan. And go ahead. I didn't do a read for Joe Erle at the top, so. Go to C3 Risk and Insurance, c3insurance.com/Joe, 619-233-8000. I'm in the airport. I don't have the number in front of me, but go ahead and hit up Joe and get some insurance from him because he helps us out a whole bunch. And of course, our friend Ketelson at A Piece That Remains, a PEACE, thatremains.com for all your cremation art and non-cremation art, just your dope art needs. Get some art for your house, man. It's time to get over that Tupac Blacklight poster was cool in high school, maybe even in college, but it's 2018. First of all, Tupac's been gone for a long time. Secondly, you don't want to have a blacklight in your house. It just makes things creepy. So get some dope art from Ketelson, a PEACE, thatremains.com, and tell her that we sent you. She'll hook you up with some dope stuff. And we've got some more fun stuff coming down the pipes your way. I'm about to get on a flight here from Tokyo back to the States and time travel. I'm leaving Tokyo at 7 p.m. on Wednesday the 5th, and 7:20 p.m. Wednesday the 5th, and I get back into California, back into Los Angeles at a little bit before 1 p.m. around noon on Wednesday the 5th. So I go back in time when I come back to Los Angeles. I gain a day back, so that's gonna be super fresh. Anyway, it's been fun hanging out and telling you about all Tokyo crime stuff. If I remember more stuff, I might throw it on at some point, but it's good talking to you. See you soon. Bye, robot.